The committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for reading a bill at length. Committee reports are printed in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen on iLegislate and in today's folder on your box account. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the majority leader, and the coat rule is relaxed.
Yes.
Madam Majority Leader?
Oh, so sorry.
Madam Majority Leader.
Yes, thank you, AML Bacon. Give me just a second. I move to lay over consideration of Senate Bill 39 until after House Bill 1154.
Senate Bill 39 will be heard after House Bill 1154. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1240.
House Bill 1240 by Representatives Joseph and Froelich, also Senator Winter, concerning protections for tenants who use housing subsidies.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1240 and the Business and Labor Committee report.
To the committee report. Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the committee, we made a couple of amendments. One of them, we strike the small landlords, or we carved them out of the bill because we did, at first as written, we did take away the small landlord exemption, but we removed that out of the bill, and also we did lower the fees, the late fees from $50 to $20 in the bill. We strike that out, as well as per conversation with different stakeholders, and also as per conversation with some of our colleagues, and we added language for technical assistance or financial assistance to landlords as well. Thank you, Madam Chair, and we ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Representative Wu. Nope. Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the passage of the committee report. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. Committee report is passed. To the bill. Sorry. Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Folks, I think we can all agree that one of our goals in the housing space is to keep people housed, to move people out of homelessness, and to reduce evictions. Evictions are terrible for landlords and, of course, terrible for the folks that experience them personally and lose their housing as a result of that. We have in place programs that actually are quite beneficial to landlords because they represent very steady payments, and that's our housing voucher program. And this bill just helps to give a little bit of grace in that laws related to the discrimination people face when trying to use a voucher to stay in housing. And so we ask for a yes vote.
Any further discussion? Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I welcome the feedback by Rep. Froelich. And again, as noted, the bill strengthens source of income discrimination protection and cooperation with emergency rental assistance application and codifies the CARES Act. And we ask for a yes vote based on everything that you've heard here from Rep. Froelich. Thank you.
Representative Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know a lot of people have already asked, looking at the voting record on this bill, why it came out, what was it, 7-0. There was a procedural issue in committee, and a few of us walked out, 6 of us to be exact. But with that, this is just one of those bills we were not okay with. It was going to be a 6-6 vote, but the issues are with the bill that it's really another bill that just goes after landlords and protecting tenants. More liberties for tenants and more restrictions and more overburden regulations and otherwise on landlords. And so this is another thing for those small businesses that's putting a leash and a choke collar on them that we continue to do in this building. So this is something we need to stop doing, but we need to stop this bill before it moves forward like we tried to do in committee. Vote no.
Representative Woog.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm blessed to be here. And I urge a no vote on House Bill 1240 We keep consistently hearing that our government's trying to make housing more affordable, but the problem is, and I think there's been 19 bills this year already that have come through that we've seen or are seeing that are, and like Representative Armagost just said, they might be hurting landlords, but the reality is there's another effect. The landlords will raise their rent or they're going to increase their fees. The more work we're putting on landlords, they will increase rent or fees. It's going to come around and actually hurt tenants just as much, if not more. So these same people we talk about trying to help that are having trouble affording housing, all of these bills create death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's over and over and over again. I believe 35 bills last year were passed through here that did the same thing. So unfortunately, the ones that are trying to help the tenants, I think we all are, but this is not doing it. This is actually doing the opposite. This is going to create higher rent, and I'm talking about a lot of these bills, but higher rent, more difficulty getting into these houses. It's common sense. More regulation on a business means someone's paying for it, and the tenants are going to be paying for this. So the people we're trying to help with this bill are actually going to be hurt more than they're helped. So I urge a no vote.
Representative Richardson.
Thank you. I do join my colleagues in asking for a no vote on this. It does a lot of things. A few of them are potentially good for tenants in the short run, but they are horrible for tenants and those seeking housing in the long run because it adds increased administrative burdens to landlords. It adds increased risk and penalties to landlords, and it, as stated, it codifies some of the eviction requirements that were put in during COVID in an emergency that has long passed. The sum total of all of this is it's going to push more and more small businessmen, landlords that have one or two homes, couples that have one home that they've moved from and keep the other in the rental space out of that business. You know, a small penalty for a late fee, but a $5,000 penalty for screwing up the paperwork is enough to scare most people out of this business. If we want to put people in homes, those homes are going to have to be available, and we got to work with the people that are providing them, not continue to punish them. As the representative who spoke before me stated, we got 19 bills that impact landlords this year. We had 35 last year. The ground keeps shifting under their feet, and they're going to leave this business behind. We are rapidly approaching the point where the only option is going to be government-provided housing, and that is not the business we need to be in. So I urge a no vote. I urge we stop punishing people that are trying to provide adequate housing for people and start supporting them. But vote no on this.
Representative Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two issues really with this, the policy side, which I'll speak to, and then also procedure side. I'll speak to that as well. You know, part of the summary here, I think is fair, right? You say the Colorado Civil Rights Commission may impose civil penalties starting at $5,000 for landlords who engage in unfair housing practices. Consumer protection kind of comes to mind, right? But the problem, I think, for me, is that when we start talking about landlords, you know, that kind of has a connotation of larger company. You got larger companies kind of taking on small guys, you know, and that's not necessarily the case. As talked about before with my other colleagues here, a landlord can be just a mom and pop, somebody that owns one housing unit, one place that they are renting out. There are a number of my colleagues here that applies to. They have one housing unit that they are renting out. So it's not this, I don't believe the landlord is even the appropriate term. So many of them are small businesses, and you know, it might end up leading now to fewer rental units available in the private market, which is exactly the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish. From a policy standpoint, I disagree. I do also want to speak again to the procedural piece of this that I was incredibly dissatisfied and very disappointed in. This was a tie vote, 6-6 in committee, and then we went into recess to allow for time for the other side to be able to whip up another vote to be able to get it through committee. Procedurally, it's just an absolute miscarriage. And you know, we were so upset as a caucus, we walked out. That's why this is 7-0 on your sheets. You look at it, my caucus looks and says, well, gosh, why in the world is this a 7-0 vote? What would have contributed to that? Well, what contributed to that is an absolute miscarriage of the procedural piece that we found was something we couldn't stand for. And so we got up and we walked out. Policy is bad. Procedure was even worse. And be able to even get it to the floor, those things shouldn't happen. We shouldn't be in a place to where we try to pull out all stops just to be able to get things to the floor. We're supposed to be working for you. We're supposed to be working for the people. We're supposed to be working on affordability, not nickel and diming. We're supposed to be working on the things that you sent us here to do and not trying to pull out all stops to make sure that the things that we want are going through. I would urge a no vote.
Representative Mabry.
Thank you, AML Bacon. Members, first I want to speak to the procedural issue. There's a complete mischaracterization of what happened in the business community in this conversation. What happened in the business community was one of our members was on Zoom and was having a technical issue. There was no pausing of the committee to whip anybody's votes. We went into committee understanding that there were 7 yes votes. Somebody was unable to unmute themselves on the Zoom, and we consulted with OLLS staff about what the proper procedure is, and the chair has prerogative to wait until somebody is dealing with a technical issue to vote for the bill. And I think everybody on both sides of the aisle in this chamber would agree that it would be completely unfair that after 6 months to a year's worth of stakeholding, that somebody not being able to operate their Zoom correctly or having technical issues for their Wi-Fi is why a bill failed. I think that's common courtesy that we should offer on both sides of the aisle. I would offer that common courtesy in my committee if a bill I didn't like wasn't going to go through, because maybe even it's because somebody's caught up voting in another committee. That's in the chair's prerogative. We checked in with OLLS on this, and there was no procedural issue. The chair can hold while somebody is having Zoom issues. That's it. No votes were whipped. We just needed to get somebody to the point where the Zoom was working. Another thing I want to talk about is we talk a lot in here about regulations that we have passed in the landlord-tenant space and the increasing burdens that they're putting on landlords and how that's going to increase rent. Well, last year, I'm proud of the fact that we passed some really robust protections for renters that said an eviction must be linked with a cause, right? We passed that. We passed some stronger regulations on landlords who are violating the warranty of habitability, meaning that they're providing homes that are not livable for renters. Last year, we heard when these laws go in effect, the rent is going to go up. Well, about a month ago, the Denver Post put out an article about how rents are going down faster in Denver and Austin than any other place in the country. We also hear all the time in committee, people come and they say, you know, if we pass these regulations, we're going to pack up and get out of the market. Okay, your house doesn't just disappear. We also have a housing crisis in terms of how many homes are for sale in the market. And so you're not going to be able to pack up your real estate property and leave. And so if you don't like the fact that we are strengthening, because let's talk about what this bill does. All this bill does is it provides some slight improvements to the process if a landlord has been proven in court to have violated the warranty of habitability. You know how rare that is? There aren't a lot of attorneys that practice in this space and take these cases all the way to trial. What this is it says in the eviction process, if you are being taken through an eviction and you assert as a defense that your landlord hasn't provided a livable home, let's talk about what that means. That means there are bed bugs in your home. That means there is mold in your home. That means there's no hot water. I've heard of people that haven't had plumbing in their home. If you can prove to the satisfaction of a judge that that is happening in your home, which, by the way, is really hard to do without an attorney. And we heard in our committee in Judiciary the other day on another bill in this space that 90-something% of landlords have an attorney in these cases, and about 10% of tenants have an attorney in these cases. And so if you have an attorney and if you take it to trial and if you prove that the landlord has done something wrong, this bill provides some additional protections. I also want to speak to the stakeholding of this bill. I totally commend the sponsors of this bill for working with the departments on their fiscal note issue, and that's part of what happened here. But what was mentioned earlier by one of the bill sponsors is that mom and pop landlords were cut out of this bill. I hate the fact that we had to make that amendment, because the only thing that touched on mom and pop landlords in this bill was the fact that mom and pop landlords would have to accept Section 8 vouchers. You know how the Section 8 voucher program works? The Section 8 voucher program is essentially a guarantee from the government that you're going to get all of the rent except for a third of your tenant's income. On the Section 8 voucher program, it's a three-way contract between the housing authority, the landlord, and the tenant. If you are on the Section 8 voucher program, you are more likely to get rent from a low-income renter than if you're not, because it's guaranteed. Most of the rent is guaranteed to be paid by the housing authority. And so all this said was you could not reject a tenant if you were a mom and pop landlord just because they have a Section 8 voucher. That's the part of the bill that was cut out. And I hate it when we cut out mom and pop landlords here, because we have not passed any laws here that says that people have to accept tenants that aren't paying rent. The eviction process remains the same. And I'll also get on the notice requirement on COVID. One of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle mentioned the notice requirement from COVID that we're extending in this legislation. What that is an extra 20 days if your property gets tax credits from the government. Mom and pop landlords aren't on LIHTC. These are LIHTC properties. And so the impact that you're having here, and we're fighting so hard against, is we're fighting against 20 extra days for LIHTC properties, and we're fighting against some additional protections if it's proven in court that your landlord violated the warranty of habitability. That's it. This is a pretty simple bill. I strongly support it, but the idea that this is a game changer or a sea change is ridiculous. Vote yes on this.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1240? Representative Sukla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I said on this committee, one thing that I heard from the other side was that there was already 7 votes. We already knew there was going to be 7 votes. What I do is I like to go to those committees and I like to listen to the witnesses. And then after I listen to the witnesses, then I make a decision. I think that's what the process of the committee is about. So we don't sit on the other side and say, okay, we got 5 votes for this or that or yet. What we do is we listen to the witnesses, and then we make a decision based on what the witnesses have said. I was a Montezuma County Commissioner, and I sat on the Montezuma County Housing Board. We had $32 million worth of property on there, and one of the things about the voucher program was there was a lot of houses out in the country that were participating in the housing in the voucher program. And so with this bill, if you just happen to have a house that has a little bit of mold, all of a sudden now we're going to kick them out of that. This bill right here is a bad bill, and it needs to have a no vote. Thank you.
Representative Richardson.
Just my colleague from the other side of the aisle made some points that are actually truly horrifying. And Thank you, Madam Chair,
Okay.
for the opportunity to speak. So I neglected to say so last time, but yeah. So to get up and try to debate with an attorney, sort of like wrestling with a pig. Everybody gets dirty, the pig likes it. But what was admitted to here just a few moments ago was that it was a shame that small business people, mom and pop renters, were left out of this. That's abhorrent. It's easy to understand why people may despise large businesses because they're faceless, even though they employ a whole lot of people and drive our economy. But to say that you had hoped you could punish small businesses, small mom and pop landlords as well, is just horrifying to hear from the well. And as for rents going down in Denver, I'm not sure if that's true. If it is, maybe it's time to just take a pause. Maybe we've already fixed the problem and we shouldn't be tinkering anymore from this House. I urge a no vote strenuously.
Okay, 1 second. Representative Mabry.
Members, I did not say that we should be punishing mom and pop landlords. I actually just described what was in the bill. The only thing that was in the bill about mom and pop landlords was that the source of income discrimination law that would require a landlord to accept a Section 8 voucher would apply to small mom and pop landlords. That is not punishing them for any wrongdoing. That just says that there is an additional incentive for them to participate in the Section 8 voucher program. To characterize it as punishment, that you would have to accept somebody who has a Section 8 voucher is ridiculous, because the Section 8 voucher program guarantees almost all of the rent to the landlords that are participating in the program. That's it. I didn't say anything about the provisions of the bill that harm wrongdoers, because that's already set out in different areas of the law. The only thing in this law that touched on mom and pop landlords was accepting tenants who have Section 8 vouchers. And I don't think that's a punishment at all. I never said that mom and pop landlords need to be punished. I just said that this section of the bill actually isn't that bad for mom and pop landlords, because if they participate in the Section 8 voucher program, they're guaranteed the vast majority of the rent. Never said anything about punishing mom and pop landlords.
Thank you. Representative Garcia Sander.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Today's solution is tomorrow's problem. So in reading through this, I am a mom and pop landlord. We have one rental. And I'm glad that the exemption was added back in for landlords with fewer than 3 or 5. I need to go back and read that more carefully. Rentals. But this bill seems like a litigation lawyer's dream kind of bill. It's going to drive up costs for the mom and pops. I have teachers who work with me who have 1 or 2 rentals, and every time we pass bills like this, it drives up their costs because they say, well, okay, I'm just going to have to add that to the rent. I'll just cover the cost of what that potentially could be. I'll just add that to the rent. So they notch up their rent just a little bit. It's going to reduce inventory. I've said it before and I'll say it again. We have a rental that we will not be renting again. We'll Airbnb it or find some other use for it, but it won't go out onto the market again because this bill establishes a minimum penalty amount of $5,000 if a person commits any of certain unfair housing violations, and the violation concerns discrimination on the basis of an individual's use of a housing subsidy. That is so wide open to litigation and gray. Go after the offenders. This is not every landlord. This is not every property owner who rents their property. Go after those offenders when that comes up, but you are blanketing all landlords with language that implies that they're guilty before charged. Today's solution is tomorrow's problem. Please vote no.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
there's a lot of stakeholders in this, and you just heard from a property owner who allows strangers under her roof to house them. I think we have this idea where we have this vilification of landlords based on some medieval idea. What we're talking about are property owners in the state of Colorado who make available their home, a property, for somebody else's benefits. Now, they're not required to. They're not required to rent that property. They're not required to be housed in that property, except for, you could say, by the policies that are promulgated in this room. And this is just another example where there is no problem the government can't make worse with a solution. And this solution will be tomorrow's problem. Because you've already heard one rental is going to be off the market for bills like this. I can say property I would like to rent is off the market because of bills like this, because of bills like last year. Those are properties that are not there. They're not available. They're not available for teachers, firemen, small endangered mammals, everybody that you list, who it is. And so I think one thing that we have to do is we have to go back and listen to the property owners. It's not a crime to own a property. Well, it's becoming a crime to own a property, but it should not be a crime to own a property. I know that Uncle Carl's top thing on the agenda to get rid of the middle class is the abolition of private property, but that just creates a feudal state where everybody's a slave. And we should want to avoid that. And what we're doing, the government is continually inserting itself into this market. Why do we not talk to the housing, the people, and say, the people who own the properties, and say, why would you not want to rent to Section 8 housing? Because there's a market. There is a definite market there, and it has a supply side of cash behind it. But instead of getting to the root of the problem of why they might not want to accept Section 8 housing, and I don't know why they might not, they get 2/3 of the rent. They get the rent up to 1/3 of the income. Who knows how much that income is? But Section 8 housing is always dependent on the processes of the government. And the government is you. The government is always willing to come in and lay the heavy hand of government behind it to fix the problems that it created. They're more likely to get rent, but there are people that don't want to accept Section 8 housing. Have you gotten to the bottom of why they don't want to accept Section 8 housing? Is it a mandatory thing now that they become servants of the government by putting their property up for rent, that they have to do the bidding of the government? Everything that every promise that the government makes that they're not fulfilling promptly, that's compelled labor. And I know the party does not have any issue with compelled labor because it's continuous.
Representative DeGraff, you're getting very dangerously close. I do believe you may be making some references to slavery, not in your typical ways. So if you could still get back to the bill.
Not in my typical way.
Yes.
Okay. Tax Liberation Day is middle of April. That's when you start working for yourself. Everything up till the middle of April, you're working for the government. So eviction must be causal. That would be last year's bill. Eviction must be causal. I think we could go back to last year's bill, and there was a lot more than the eviction must be causal in that bill. Now here's an issue. The rents are going down faster than the market, and I do appreciate that the sponsor brought that up. The rents are going down. And why would the rents go down? Because of these bills? No, because people are leaving Colorado and they're creating
they're creating a surplus of houses, which is contrary to this idea here where we have a shortfall of 100,000 homes and apartments. That was based on somebody's study. And you know what that study was based on? That study was based on the presumed influx of lots of young fertile females. Now, I'm not sure where the young fertile females were going to come from, but that's where these bills are oriented. Right now, we have that's what they were based on. That's what they premised their numbers on.
Young, fertile.
Wasn't me.
females. Okay,
Wasn't me. That's what these studies are premised on.
okay.
And then when they ask where they're coming from, they say, well, we don't know. We just think they're coming. So we have a surplus of houses in Denver and Colorado Springs right now. And the demographics don't support the number of housing units that are going in. So you know what that does? That means the market is fixing this problem. The market is fixing this problem. The government does not need to stick, because there is nothing so permanent as a temporary government program. This will foul up the market even more. Because do we have any issues with habitability? If somebody has an issue of habitability, you know what's great about having a housing surplus? Is they can move to someplace that is habitable. And that's how you fix it with the market. What you want in the market is you want to have a lot of homes available. You want to have a lot of properties available. You want to make a system where somebody has lots of options and they can vote with their feet. And they can vote a landlord out of business if that property owner, let's get away from that term landlord that you so vilify. You can vote a property owner out of business by not renting. That's the beauty of the free market, is that you take your good and you exchange it for somebody else's good. Well, if they don't have something that's good, then you don't exchange it. And you go to some place that is. That's the beauty of the free market. This is a compelled market. And I can tell you a danger of dealing with anything with the Section 8 housing would be you are now putting yourselves at the whim of the government. That's a place that you don't want to be. What you're driving when you talk about risk of $5,000, because if somebody takes you to court, we've had this conversation before. If somebody files a frivolous lawsuit, they still have to go to court. They still have to retain an attorney. That cost still goes into the property. The risk of a $5,000. Now, I would think that somebody who's renting a property is not going to have an issue with it, but we just had a bill the other day that talked about the requirements for energy efficiency. And these multifamily properties that are going to have to invest millions of dollars. They're going to have to invest millions of dollars, and somehow they're going to have to recoup that out of the rent. Otherwise, they might not be considered habitable. And then they could get a $5,000 fine. So the thing that we should do if we want to make housing affordable is you should make housing affordable. How do you make housing affordable? Well, you could lower the cost of energy. You could lower the cost of regulation. We're looking at right now homes, $25,000 of new regulation. We're looking at requiring everything be handicap accessible. We're looking at another $30,000. We're looking at wildlife urban interface, and who knows what that's going to be. We're looking at probably an extra $100,000 in the cost of a home, and that even if it's not directly to that rental, it applies because it drives up the market. But instead of looking internally and saying, what can this group do? What has this group done? What has this General Assembly done to drive up the cost of housing? It just says, oh, we've driven up the cost of housing, so we're going to require the citizens of Colorado to take the brunt of that. We don't want to ask them why they might be disinclined to rent a property. We'll just require that they rent a property. We might not ask them why their house would be uninhabitable, But we have a process for that. You go to the planning commission and you say, this house is not habitable. And the planning commission is going to have to send somebody out there. They're going to have to evaluate whether that home has a certificate of occupancy. If that home is uninhabitable, it shouldn't have a certificate of occupancy, and that home can't be rented. So there's already a process in place, yet you're circumventing a process of government that you're saying does not work, and you're making it a lawfare solution. You're making it a legal solution. You're telling people that they need to take it to court. So what you're telling the local governments is that they can't handle their own processes. Well, if the local governments can't handle their processes, that's a whole different issue, but you don't take it out on the property owner. We haven't even addressed why property prices might go up, which would be 22.5% devaluation of wages based on government spending in the last 4 years due to Bidenomics. Unprecedented.
Representative DeGraff, this bill, can we please debate 1240, which requires a landlord who initiates an eviction proceeding for non-payment of rent against a tenant to comply with certain notice requirements set forth in federal law?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think landlord is prejudicial language, but I guess that'll be for another conversation. We have higher rent, but the market is a surplus. That's driving rents down. It's driving rents down because people are leaving the state. People are putting their homes on the market because they can't keep up. They can't keep up with the regulations out of this body. Administrative burdens, penalties. We need to ask these people why they're in the business of renting properties so why on earth would they turn somebody down? They want a family in that home, and they want to receive payment for it. Why would they turn down free money? But instead of asking that, you say, well, we'll penalize you for not accepting free money. The need for this bill is predicated on fabrication. We have a market that is solving the problem because the rules and regulations that are coming out of this building are driving people out of Colorado and creating a surplus. So if you want to help, and then we're leaving money in the ground. We're leaving jobs in the ground. We're leaving that circular. So we're taking away the means of the people to pay their rent, and then the only solution that you can come up with is to penalize the people, the property owners that are willing to engage in the rental market, still and do that. And you're doing these things that will push those properties into corporate ownership, make them less affordable. Because the algorithm to fix rent is called Monday morning staff meeting at that point. So this body, yes, we need to look at how to make things more affordable, and the way to make things more affordable is to stop making them less affordable. The bill mill needs to slow down, do a little introspection as to taking ownership for the reason that the market is so screwed up. I mean, that's kind of a pipe dream. It's not going to happen. You're just going to continue to impose rules, regulations, and fines and fees on the citizens of Colorado. So I ask for a no vote on this. Ask for some introspection and some evaluation of what needs to be done out of this room to get this room out of the rental market and restore the market.
Representative Woog.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's only Monday. Okay, so the first page, the bill requires a landlord to comply with certain notice requirements. The bill prohibits a landlord from charging a covered tenant late fee in the amount that exceeds 20. The court must order a reduction, the court must order a reduction, ... and order the landlord. The landlord must. So I'm going to replace landlord with business owner because they are. And actually, some take a loss, but some are making a little bit of money. Some make more than others, obviously, but the bill requires a business owner to comply with certain notice requirements. The bill prohibits a business owner from charging a covered tenant a late fee in an amount that exceeds $20. The court must order a reduction, ... and order the business owner. Order the business owner. The business owner must. So these are demands in this law, and it's regulation, and if there's an issue with business owners, I know that DORA does a heck of a job. They're all over this. I know that for a fact. I've experienced it. DORA will take care of the bad actors, happily, and there's plenty of people out there to turn people into DORA. So I think we're covered. DORA does they're very thorough with this. It was mentioned by my colleague from Denver, people sell the properties, and I think I'm just paraphrasing, that doesn't mean these properties are no longer available. But if we're not talking apartments, a lot of business owners have single-family residential, and they sell the property, and people buy those properties to live in those properties. So that will take away vacancies. That will take away vacancies, and that will increase rents. And we can talk more about the rent rates around here, too. Another major issue we're talking about, when we're talking about small-time business owners that are selling properties, guess what? There's actually corporate landlords that are coming in here, and they're buying the properties. And they don't really care as much about this regulation. They're probably having an easier time fighting issues in court. They're corporate landlords. They have a lot more money than the people we're talking about. They have the money to fight the issues, and they are buying up the housing, and frankly, they're probably not giving as good of service as the vast majority of these small business owners that are trying to provide good housing and fair housing and be fair with tenants. So I still urge a no vote on this. Like I said, and I think we're all saying this on my side of the aisle, we're just really hurting the market. It's going to ultimately hurt tenants more than it helps them. So I urge a no vote. Thank you.
Representative Budman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm also rising against this bill. I wanted to talk about a couple comments my colleague from Denver spoke of earlier. I know I was over here waiting to have my turn. Yes, my colleague is right that rental prices are going down in Denver. According to KDVR, rent in Denver is decreasing. But on the other side of that coin is the reason is because there are higher vacancies now due to safety concerns. Public safety concerns is one big thing that's happening here in Denver, and that's why vacancies have been rising as much as rent has been going down. So on that part, he is right. On the second comment that I wanted to speak of was about landlords, small business, mom and pop shops that are threatening to leave the state. Yes, you're right. You cannot take your rental property and take it outside the state, but what that does, and in my case, which I'm also a small mom and pop landlord, small business, is that I am truly thinking about selling my rental properties and just getting out of the business altogether. That's the thing, is that when we say that rental property now comes off the market as a rental property and becomes a permanent home for somebody, which is a good thing. But now they got two other rental properties that could go helping somebody that cannot they can really afford it because they're paying rent, but they cannot qualify for a mortgage. That's what I do. I rent properties to total strangers. I interview with them. I show them the house, and I let them rent my property, not because they can't afford it, but because they cannot qualify for a mortgage, and I can understand that. That's what I do. I help them. But now that if I sell my rental properties and get out of the business altogether, that's two less rental properties on the market. I don't think that's the intent of this bill, but that's what it's going to do. That's the unintended consequence of nickel and diming small business owners, small rental property owners. That's what happens. And that's not a threat. It truly is happening. Vacancies are going up. What do you think is going to happen with those vacancies? They're probably going to be sold. So those are the two things that I wanted to talk about, and I urge a no vote on this bill, please. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1240? Seeing none, the question before us is its passage. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. No. The bill passes.